guys, welcome to 𝑽𝒊𝒐𝒍𝒆𝒕 Awakening. Today they're called FIFA Furnace, featuring our Cinderace EX from Stellar Crown with the Flash Strike attack and also Garnet Volley. So Garnet Volley allows you to hit any of your opponent's Pokemon, even on the bench. Choose any one of your opponent's Pokemon and do 180 damage to it for 1 Fire, 1 Darkness, and 1 Fighting. So it is pretty heavy, the attack cost. That's why we have our Flareon. Flareon EX from Surging Sparks that has the Burning Charge attack, allowing us to accelerate 2 basic energy onto one of our bench Pokemon, searching our deck for those energies as well, and attach them while doing 130 damage for 1 Fire and 1 Colorless. We are doing our Sparkling Crystal for this list. So to basically support Garnet Volley, 180 damage is obviously not enough even on the 𝑑𝑗𝑗𝒂𝒂𝒓𝒄𝒂𝒄𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 And all of those support EXs that isn't a Terra, obviously if they have Ogerpon on any other Terra Pokemons on the bench, you're not allowed to target them for any damage. You're doing 0 damage with a Garnet Volley, so make sure you're aware of that. Do not be targeting Terra Pokemons with that thing. So Cinderace is actually pretty cool because we have Venture Bomb now. Venture Bomb with Munkidori. We are stacking on our Dory since we have our Burning Charge for the free acceleration with Crispin and Sparkling Crystal as well. We're not doing a Grand Tree. We have Rare Candy and Drayton to help to accelerate the evolution for Cinderace. We can evolve slowly since we are charging with the attack, so we can actually bench the Scorbunny and then slowly evolve later on. Once we done enough damage with our Flareon, then we can actually get our Cinderace out and then do some snipe with our Munkidori. So the Munkidori actually is pretty cool just because we get to transfer onto any one of their Pokemon 3 damage counter from our Pokemon. So if they do not do a one-hit knockout on our Cinderace or even the Flareon, we could actually transfer those damages onto their bench Latias even, and then do a snipe with our Garnet Volley for a straight KO, drawing 2 prize cards with our Cinderace, which is pretty neat. And if we don't have any damage counters to transfer, we got that one Venture Bomb. Getting a Tails allows us to play Munkidori with that Darkness energy attached. Make sure to remember to attach your basic Darkness or Luminous onto Munkidori for you to play its ability. We have 2 copies, so play on that with your Artisan. We also have our 𝑑𝑚𝑪𝑮𝑳 for the draw support along with our Explorer's Guidance, Professor's Research, Drayton, Kofu, and also Surfer allows us to switch back into the Cinderace. Cinderace has free retreat, by the way, so after doing Flare Strike, you're not allowed to do it again a second time. You can actually play Flare Strike and then Garnet Volley. You're allowed to attack. Cinderace can still attack, but you're not allowed to use Flare Strike on your next turn. But you still get to retreat and switch back into the Cinderace for you to attack once more with Flare Strike twice in a row, or you can actually retreat to a Dusclops, and then use the ability to basically put your Cinderace back into the active spot and do Flare Strike again. You are sacrificing 1 prize though. Make sure to be careful with the prize counter, just because we do have that one Briar that we actually can play at just the right moment. Make sure to count your opponent's prizes and also your own prize cards. If they have 2 prizes remaining, you actually get to play Briar to collect an extra prize if you knock out your opponent's active Pokemon with damage done by your Terra Pokemon. So that's basically the gist of the deck build. Let's just get back to the game right now. We're up against Zoroark EX with Roaring Moon. So Roaring Moon can do a straight KO, but they are harming themselves. They are, doing 200 damage recoil to their own Roaring Moon, which is an EX, so they can't really do it more than once, unless if they heal. There's no more Emergency Jelly, so they gotta play something like Turo or Penny or something, Scramble Switch into another Roaring Moon, something like that, to allow them to play it a second time without knocking themselves out, which is gonna cost them 2 prizes. So it's actually pretty interesting that Roaring Moon decks could actually have a higher chance of putting both players into sudden death. So if you guys are not familiar with sudden death, it's basically when the game ends in a tie, when both players drew their last prize card at the same time, or when they do their last knockout at the same time for the win condition. So basically, if both players lose the game or if both players win, then you essentially go to sudden death and you have to play a second game where the player that draws the first prize wins the whole game. So it's pretty interesting just because now the whole game has shifted. For your second game, all you have to do is draw a single prize card to win the match. And you don't need to do anything else. You just need to basically do 1 knockout or target one of their buddies or whatever, draw that 1 single prize, and you win the entire match. How cool is that? So Roaring Moon could actually force us to go to sudden death, and then for the second match, If they're playing 𝑺𝒄𝒂𝒓𝒄𝒂𝒓𝒄𝒂𝒓𝒄𝒂𝒓𝒄𝒂𝒓, they're actually doing Zoroark build, but if they are playing more on an Ancient Box turbocharged style of Roaring Moon EX, it would be a lot easier for them to get their first prize on their very first turn, going second, you know, after drawing out and discarding their energy, doing an energy switch, or Janine. They could even play Sada in an energy switch for Frenzied Gouging, first turn KO, drawing their basically first or last prize to win their second game. So if you win the second game after sudden death, you essentially win both matches. That's how the game goes. Obviously, the first one is a tie, it doesn't count, and the second one is the only one that matters. So I'm probably over-explaining stuff as usual, but let's just get back into the game right now. So they're pulling out our Munkidori with a boss, trapping us in the active. Now we got an extra Surfer. I think for this game we only have one Surfer and one Kieran. We got an Iono as well in the list, but eventually I decided to swap out Iono for another Surfer, just because for some reason getting stuck is pretty common for this list. Getting stuck with a Munkidori or a Hoothoot in the active. We don't want to wait for them to KO our Pokemon, because they could actually do a boss on our Eevee as well. And if we don't evolve the Eevee fast, they could actually knock it out with bench damage at the same time, because it only has 50 HP, remember? Gotta be careful and evolve that thing fast. And that's why we have switch, because if we switch on our first turn going second, we can already evolve and then play the crystal for our first turn, burning charge, you know, accelerating energies on our what's it called again, Scorbunny, while doing fast damage at the same time. If we don't get our Sparkling Crystal, we got our Crispin. I think we only have one copy now, but we do have Noctowl to get the Crispin into play, 2 Terra Orbs to help us evolve the Flareon as easily as we can, as soon as possible, and also to get Cinderace for the Rare Candy evolution. If they play Buddy though, we gotta be extra careful. We do have our Raboot and Ultra Ball to evolve stage by stage, but if we got our Raboot prized, it would be a bit difficult. We might have to wait until Buddy gets away. Goes away before we can actually play on the Rare Candy evolution. We actually have a match against Galvantula EX where they lock our item every single turn until the end of the game, which you'll get to see how we survive. I think it's the next one after this match. We got a matchup against Galvantula. So Stellar Cinderace versus Stellar Galvantula, both from the same set, both the very first Stellar Pokemons in the format. So it'll definitely make for an interesting showdown of sorts. So now we're choosing not to retreat onto the Flareon, just because if we do Burning Charge a second time, we would be giving them the free KO on our Flareon. We want to be doing a straight OHKO on their Zoroark, 280 damage. With our Sparkling Crystal, we just need that basic fire, and that's why we attached it on our last turn onto our bench, instead of attaching an energy on the Dory for the retreat. We got no cards in our hand. I think we made a mistake here. At some point in the game, we had an Arven. I think earlier, one of the previous turns, we played it for a Rare Candy. We should have played it for a Nest Ball to summon our 𝑽𝒊𝒐𝒍𝒆𝒕, because we got no other supporters in our hand to draw cards with. So we needed the 𝑽𝒊𝒐𝒍𝒐𝒕, we needed the Nest Ball. We shouldn't actually search for our Rare Candy, just because we have a Raboot in our hand. We could have evolved it stage by stage with a Terra Orb as well. We got Raboot Terra Orb, but we didn't have the candy. So we actually played Arven for the candy, which is pretty stupid. I know, but at that point, at that moment, it felt pretty good to candy evolve, you know? Because if you have a Scorbunny with enough energies to attack with it on your bench, it's quite likely for your opponent to target it with either bench snipe or a boss. So you want to be evolving it fast. It's definitely the wrong move here though. I don't think they can actually do a bench snipe for Zoroark, and I don't think they would do a boss on it for only a single prize draw, but you never know, they might just target our Scorbunny. If they do play a boss though, we can actually play the Artisan to pull out another Scorbunny, so I don't think we should be too worried about that. Evolving fast is not top priority apparently. I guess I still need a little bit more practice for this build. Yeah, because we got 3 Scorbunnies. It's not really a big deal if we lose the Raboot, I don't think. because we can still draw out a supporter for us to candy evolve at some point in the game. All we need is the 𝑑𝑚𝑪𝑮𝑳. They could actually set us back one turn though, but we have the Sparkling Crystal. We get to do Carnelian for 280 damage with Flareon while waiting for our Cinderace to show up. So there really is no rush at all, honestly. But thankfully at some point we drew something from the top deck. I think we drew out the 𝑑𝑚𝑪𝑮𝑳. Yeah, so make sure not to make any wrong moves. One small slip up and you lose the whole game. Are not allowed to slip up anymore in the current meta. It's just super tight right now. And if you miss that one Nest Ball, if you miss that one search, if you search for the wrong cards, that's it, you know. Make sure to be extra careful with every single move, every single point, every point, checkpoint in the game is super important. Even the ones that you think it's not, you know, that doesn't require much thinking is actually pretty significant sometimes. I think it's just experience though. Just go for multiple practices. Don't sweat it if you lose the game. At least you're growing, at least you're learning what is important to think about and what you need to be analyzing on, you know, what you need to be focusing on during specific points in the game. It's a learning process, no rush, no need to catch those win streaks or whatever. There's no point, honestly. Just have fun with the game, you know? Have fun growing. And anyways, I think I'm just gonna end the voice right here because focus on the game. Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. If you find this combo interesting, drop comments down below about what you guys think. The potential of Cinderace EX in the current meta with Dusknoir, or maybe just Dusclops. And Venture Bomb with Munkidori as well. We got also a Stellar Flareon for the Turbo XL. So that's all for this one. We'll see you next time. Have a great day and bye everyone!